Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to be looking at our weekly standard tournament report. So this is for standard best of 3. We're going to look at kind of the tournament scene, what's happening on MTGO. There weren't any large tournaments this week, so nothing to kind of factor in there, but usually we like to kind of compare and contrast what we're seeing on the MTG Arena ladder when we do the Arena metagame breakdown, where kind of it's more, the ladder system rewards kind of volume of games, where we sometimes see variances in terms of the tournament scene. So this is something we'll kind of keep an eye on as we go from week to week. We're going to be getting the data here from MTG Decks, where they have a nice win rate matrix over the last 15 days. We could kind of see the slice and dice, matchup details, stuff of that nature. So we'll start here. I'll paste this along with all the deck lists we're going to be covering in the video description so you can lift and shift. So we'll look at some of the top performing decks. There's also a couple 5-0s that are interesting decks that haven't seen huge amounts of play, but are doing kind of interesting things. We'll also see kind of an innovative take on the Simic Terror deck, kind of shifting up the sideboard plan, which seems really cool on how they're kind of pivoting the deck itself. But let's jump into it. And before we do, really quick, see in the top left-hand corner of the screen, we are donating every penny I make from YouTube this month. I'm donating it to a local Toronto-based food bank to help out with those in need over the holiday season. We're doing pretty well so far. The standard videos at the beginning of the week always kind of carry the rest of the week. But we're 182 out of $800 raised for the month. That's the goal. It's a stretch goal, but want to make a nice sizable donation. So if you are able to watch my videos, don't want to ask anybody for any financial stuff, but we can raise the money together by just kind of consuming the content. So greatly appreciate it if you can. Let's jump into the data. So Dimir Midrange is the most played deck. Reasonable win rate, 55%. So this would cover any of your tempo variants of the deck. Seems to be performing pretty poorly against the Demons deck, but beating up on a lot of the kind of mid-rangey, slower decks that we see in the format. Golgari Demons. So Golgari Midrange seems to be tagged as Golgari Demons, anything with Unholy Annex. One thing I didn't notice when looking at some sample deck lists, a lot of them aren't on Archfiend the Dross, so the Demon moniker is kind of tagged to Unholy Annex deck. So for all effective purposes, this is Dimir Midrange we look at. And there's a couple variants I want to show you as well, including a double combo version. Mono red deck wins, posting a really nice win rate, 59%, along with the mono white tokens deck. The mono white decks can offer a slight splash. Usually they play one of the Surveil lands and either include Jace or Kaya, depending on which route they want to go. Boros Burn had an uptick this week in terms of win rates. The mono black demons list kind of dropping. Jeskai Convoke has been putting up some reasonable results in the last little bit. Quite a few 5-0s. In part, like a lot of the Golgari decks are skimping on some mass sweepers, so it's attacking it at a different angle. The Zur Overlord decks haven't been doing that great, 45%. We kind of see down. Some of these are smaller sample sizes. The mere Demons list is doing pretty well, but only 19 matches is a little bit small to kind of extrapolate. Boros Mice, again, like kind of the red deck mouse package with some like Sheltered by Ghosts, could be auras, stuff like that. Mono green, small sample. This Sultai midrange is just some weird noise. Like some of it was a top 16 tournament. Someone's finished top 16 in a 12-person tournament, so not the greatest showing necessarily there. And then we just kind of go down. These are very small samples, so I would kind of take it with a grain of salt in terms of like the overall population. So we'll jump into it. The Dimir Midrange list, we have this one here by The Pilgrim. They went 5-0 in a league. So this one, we got the Flood Pit Drowners. A lot of the lists are kind of adopting Flood Pits over Deep Cavern Bat. It plays better into like a creature heavy meta. It can shuffle away stuff, lets you go offense, defense, and it's a great threat to kind of bounce back with Kaido. 3 Enduring Curiosities, Mockingbirds can copy your curiosities, any of your kind of useful creatures. Very Mastermind draws you cards, and Spyglass Siren. So a lot of cheap evasive creatures that you can then flip in Kaido. Baybloom Trick is an interesting card here. So 3 mana, taps down a creature and you create 2 1/1s. So pretty interesting kind of tempo-oriented play offered from the deck. Then just a bunch of cheap removal. You have Spell Stutter in this version over the I forget the the 2-mana one that you pay mana from Thunder Junction. My brain is kind of fried today. But spell stutter with all the fairies. You have the Fairy Mastermind. Mockingbird could create copies, so you could kind of chain it together, the fairy trick. So interesting kind of inclusion there. Kaido is a big part of the deck. You have Soulstone Sanctuary, which if you squint hard enough is actually a ninja, which plays nicely with the deck along with a fairy. So fairy ninjas are on the menu today. Ghost Vacuum for Graveyard Hate, Withering Torment for like enchantment hates, flexible removal if needed for creatures, negates Preachers as kind of a stonewall, kind of grindy element, Tidebinder for activated abilities, Blot Out for big creatures, Planeswalkers, kind of flexible in that regard, some cheap removal, Gixman the Sweeper, Shelly for midrange mirrors, some cheap removal and cut down, Harvester, really good against like Convoke, go wide stuff, and then Duress for hand hate here. Then go to mono white tokens. So this one here, no splash in terms of color with this particular variant. We have the Fountain Ports as well as the Demolition Fields and Sunken Citadels. Beza's Enduring Innocence, Mistmore is pretty stock. With this one here, they're playing 2 copies of Clay-Fired Bricks. By the way, this was from Canopus 16. They went 5-0. So this lets you find a land, gains you some life, and then you could craft with artifacts. And it's an Anthem that creates 2 tokens, which plays nicely with the Caretaker's Talent package. Sunfall Split Up, 4-1 split, some laydown arms. So the benefit of being mono white, you get to take a bunch of cheap exile-based removal to go along with Get Lost and Soul Partition. 1 copy of Elspeth in the Planeswalker slot. You have Authority in here for the aggressive haste decks, Exercise, flexible removal that hits a bunch of things. Split Up. Stonebrain's an interesting one if you want to hit like combo pieces. This deck, I think, has a hard time against the Demons deck, like the Dimir Demons, the combo version with Doomsday, because they kind of lose to the mill out. Also, hitting Jace can be impactful. Elspeth Smite, and then for cheap removal, and then another Beza for the aggressive decks. Red Decks wins. Pierre Polivier, the conservative Canadian leader, is apparently 5-0ing with mono red. And we have pretty stock list, all things considered. This is pretty much card for card the stock list. We're seeing week over week that they're keeping the 3 Sunspine links in the sideboard. We have the Urbrass Forge, Torch, Litho, and Twisted Fealty. The one thing I would see that could potentially be reasonable, there's not a huge allotment of sack fodder for this to hit 3 damage. So using Scorching Dragonfire could be reasonable. A get to hit, like out of Dimir, you really want to hit the Enduring Curiosity with the Exile effect. Same with Unstoppable Slasher. So playing Scorching Dragonfire, or because it's instant speed, or Obliterating Bolt could be a consideration as well. Jeskai Convoke. This one is from Depien. So this list here, it's Jeskai in the main for the Spyglass Siren, which is another 1-mana card that creates a artifact that you can use for Gleeful Demolition. Clockwork Percussionist is both an artifact and some card advantage. This one's on 2 Arabelles, which if it gets some attacks in, could be big gains and drains of life. It's also an artifact that can be used for the Gleeful in the pinch. Some Sheltered by Ghosts in here, but go wide, tap things for value. Whether it be Case for removal, the Imidanes for Lord effect, you have Knight for card advantage, Warden for kind of value plays mixed in. Tech Hazards for the Mirror, Stroke and Protect the Negotiators for like sweepers, big mana decks, Torch for cheap removal, Get Lost, flexible removal against like temporary lockdown. Sheltered by Ghost is useful in like the creature aggro mirrors. Just getting a reasonably sized life linker can help win a lot of races. Boros Burn. So we have some elements here. So it's more prowessy than Mouse Package. So we have the Slick Shots in here where the mono red is playing the Mouse Package. Hired Claw, 2 copies of Kellen, seeing some play. 1 Screaming Nemesis main, 1 in the side, which is interesting. Some of these lists have played upwards of 4. We have Monstrous Rage, Boros Charm, Lightning Helix. So you're getting these from the white effects. Some copies of Case of the Crimson Pulse, which is nice. Found these decks usually ran out of gas, so the Case can help you quickly replenish. Playing also the full 4 copies of Restless Biovac as a utility creature land. Forges, being Boros gives you access to Exercise, which helps for bigger things. Rest in Peace for Graveyard Hate, Case, Destroy Evil. Knight of Grace is some interesting tech. It's all the black base removal decks, you throw that in. None of their cut downs, anything like that can impact it. First strike's really good as well. So then you throw on like Monstrous Rage, stuff like that makes it a formidable attacker. Lightning Helix in the red-based mirrors can help win races. So there's a 4-color Beanstalk deck, and we saw a couple of these. This one's from Cybo in the 5-0 section. So moving away from kind of the Zur package back to the traditional domain with Archangel of Wrath, Atraxas, and Overlords. Single copy of Ancient Cornucopia, Glass Casket as removal, Analyze the Pollen to help you hit land drops, and then be tutor effects. Sunfall's in here, Ley Lines, Beanstalks kind of mixed in. Then your Pyroclasm as a cheap sweeper, cheap counters, Terra Thunder flexible removal, and this is good against like the mono white decks or anything like heavy enchantment based decks, mid-range battles, Robbery for the kind of mid-range domain mirrors, Rest in Peace for Graveyard Hate, Authority for the aggressive deck. Then this was a deck that's had a couple placements, and I know like Doomlake was playing a copy of this, and it seems pretty good. Ms. Lizzie, 5-0'd. So it's a collector's cage deck. So this put something on hideaway, so you put something face down under it, and then when you have 3 or more creatures with different powers, you get to cast a card for free. And this also puts counters on things. So you have Paw Patch Recruit that gives you multiple bodies that can put counters on things. Overlord of the Mistborers could be one of the hits off the deck. Big powerful top end that you can also just cast normally with Impending. Evangelist as another effect that can leave multiple bodies behind. Battlecry. Sandstorm Salvager, one of the big score cards. Creates 2 bodies here, and then you can put a counter on things and give Trample, which is a bit nice with the big creatures. Nurturing Pixie could rebuy stuff. Llanowar for ramp. Squire is another card that can be gets really big, gets flying, and can kind of push through damage. Toll Smear is another kind of hit where it can give you multiple bodies with creating the token that's associated with it. Soul Partition, Sheltered by Ghost as cheap removal. Then you have Invasion for hand hate. Aven Interrupter is kind of a counter spell out of a white-based deck. Ghost Vacuum for graveyard hate. More Sheltered for the aggressive mirrors. Sarah Paragon for the grindier matchups. And then Beza for mid-rangey kind of life gain elements against the aggressive decks. So this one here, Simic Terror by Bolov Art, 5-0'd. Pretty stock main board, so Picklock Prankster in the main with your kind of big dumb creatures that come out. Cash Grab, Seed of Hope, just a bunch of cheap cards to fill your graveyard. Bushwhack and Analyze the Pollen can both help you find your lands. Storm Chaser's Talent really spiked in price this last week to double digits. So something to keep in mind there. So you'll notice with the mana base, pretty stock Simic, but in your sideboard you have a Plains. So you can bring in your Plains, and then you have a Monastery Mentor Sheltered by Ghost. The big thing here is if you can take them off the graveyard in these decks, then they have like really awkward to cast spells. Whereas you could just bring in the Mentor and then play like a prowessy deck. So the removal might not align up in that regard, or they play more graveyard hate hoping to beat you that way. This can allow you to go wide. Shelter is also nice against the aggressive decks, just to help you gain huge chunks of lifelink. Pick your poison, Paw Patch Formation, Minor Misstep. I don't love this card, it's very niche. I think I would just rather play like another Negate, Disdainful Stroke, or like a soft counter in this place, but then you have Ghost Vacuum for kind of the mirrors. So we have our first Golgari's Demons in quotes. So this one was from the Birds of Paradise challenge. They went 6-3 into the top 4. So this one's more of just traditional mid-rangey. So 3 Sheoldreds, Harvester, Llanowar, Mosswood, 1 Oozemane. We have Glissa, Preachers, and Aklazotzen. No Archfiend of Dross, notably. Some Annoyance, Cut Downs, Go for the Roads, a lot of removal. Maelstrom Pulse, really flexible. We see Virtue included again. Only a single copy of Duress. Some of the decks play more Duress main. Unholy Annex with the full Soulstone Sanctuary in the mana base. Just various kind of removal effects at the end. Command, Ghost Vacuum. We have Frillback, the side, not in the main. Lily as a grindy element. Terra Thunder, really flexible removal. Some Vivian Reeds for the grindier matchups. And a copy of Harvester Misery. So a couple sweepers in this one. A bunch of cheap removal, hand hate, kind of grind elements. Comparing that, so this one's a double combo version. This one went 5-0 by McWinsauce. So a lot of common effects, Llanowar, Mosswood, Glissa, Deep Cavern, Sentinel, but it has the Enduring Tenacity, Bloodthirsty Conquer combo. So if an opponent would lose life, you gain that much life, With Tenacity, it creates an infinite loop as soon as he triggers that drains him out of the game. But incidentally, just dealing damage to your opponent can help offset your life total. It gives you more time to win. And it's a 5/5 flying for 5. Innkeeper's Talent, as well as Vraska as the other combo within the deck. Only 2 copies of Unholy Annex in this version here. No Soulstone in this one, playing the Fountain Port instead. Graveyard Hate, Akko's Odds for the kind of the grindier matchups. Thrillback, Flexible Removal, Graveyard Hate. Command is a sweeper, bunch of removal options, Hand Hate, and cheap cutdowns. And then last one, deck that's been putting up a few 5-0s is the Azorius Glyph deck. So this deck here is Leyline X for a cheap artifact that can kind of upsize any of your creatures. Zoetic Glyph can animate your artifacts, but then you have cheap things like Knobs Inspector, Spyglass Siren, kind of like the Convoke, but instead of shattering them to make tokens, you're animating them with Zoetic Glyph or tapping them to Warden. Having Regal Bunnicorn can get double strike with Leyline and Trample, which is big because this card otherwise just gets chumped for days. Steel Seraph can also provide an evasion. Mockingbird could copy any of your effects. You have Sheltered by Ghost and Assimilation Aegis as some removal. Schooner kind of as a value card. I think Doomwake was also playing Lava Spar Boots as a couple copies just to make anything have haste, which is another interesting inclusion there. Graveyard Hate with Rest in Peace. Tashana's Tidebinder for activated abilities. Get Lost, Smite as removal. Lauren for Artifact Enchantment Hate. Negotiators is a cheap counter. Destroy Evil, Negate. Just flexible options there. So for the week, let me know what you've been playing, what you've been liking, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.